So I want to start off our time together today by sharing something that's going to make me seem a little old to a few of you, probably similar and relatable to some, and very young and not relatable to a group of you as well. This year is the year that I turn 30 years old. So I don't know what that does in you, but I apologize if that's offensive in some way. Many of my friends are in their 30s and 40s, so I'm taking every opportunity I can in this season of my life to remind them of that, and that I'm still in my 20s. In fact, in our overtime podcast that we do at the end of every series, we'll do it with our staff or our teaching team, and it's me and Jordan. Jordan's 30, and then there's Jen and Buck, and they are not 30. And so I just get to hang with them and remind them often that I'm still in my 20s. And I joke that I bring a freshness or relevance, which if you know me at all, I've been an old person internally since I was 5, so it's just not true whatsoever. But because this year is turning a little bit more of like a marker year for me to look back on and reflect all that has transpired in the last 10 years, and I'm reflecting on just so much change that has happened in my life. When I was 20, I was an unmarried college student at UT, and now today I've been married for almost 8 years. This is my family, my beautiful wife Ashley, and our 2 boys there. And I've been married for 8 years. I've got a family now. I've got kids, and I've been on staff at Northpoint full time now for 8 years now, just as of a few days ago as well. So pretty crazy there, thinking about just everything I've seen here in this community, in this church during that time. Thinking about just everything I've learned about myself and the crafts that I partake in, so many experiences, so many ups and downs. I mean, there's been so much that has happened in the last decade that it makes me just grateful and also really excited for all that is to come, God willing, in future decades of my life. But it's funny because as we were getting into this series and we're talking about identity and self-awareness and all these kind of things, I was thinking back to 20-year-old Jeremy. And this is 20-year-old Jeremy. The beard is starting, but it hasn't quite taken hold yet. But as I was looking at this picture and thinking about 20-year-old me, looking back now, I realize how much I didn't know and how unaware I was of who I was in my life and how much I still had to learn. And that's not knocking on all 20-year-olds. There are 20-year-olds that are far more mature than I was. But for me, there was just a life experience and a self-awareness that I didn't have yet, right? Like I didn't know what I didn't know. And during this season of my life, I would hear this phrase from my peers in college and just friends. I would hear this phrase pop up all over the place. It was really interesting as people contemplated life decisions and making big moves in their life. They would say something like this. They would say, "I'm just trying to find myself." I found this phrase really interesting. I heard it all the time. And at its core, it really is a phrase that's all about meaning and purpose and identity, which we've been talking about identity in this series, and we've defined it this way. We've said that identity is the answer to the question, who am I? When you strip away all the titles and all the roles that you play in your life, all the hats you wear, all the different things you do for work, or being a parent or a spouse, whatever it might be, when you strip it all away at your core, who are you? That's a really important question for us to answer and explore, because who you are informs what you do. I think this is why I heard that phrase, "I'm trying to find myself," so much in college, because it's kind of a crossroads for our life, where we're in a season, we're making all these big life decisions about career and school and community and who we do life with and who we might end up marrying and having kids with for the rest of our life, like so many different decisions, and it causes us to look inward and go, well, if I'm going to make these decisions, I first have to go, who am I? What do I want really that's going to drive these decisions in my life? And we've been looking at these questions and exploring all this for the past 4 weeks. And I just have to say, if you're coming in here brand new, or maybe you missed some of the weeks of this series, I would highly encourage you to go back and watch or listen, because this series has really built on each other. All the different parts is really up until this point where we're wrapping it up today with chapter 5 of 5 different chapters of this content. But the core principle that we've built to in terms of talking about who we are is that there is an identity available to all of us. That through Jesus, there's this identity that we can say, in Christ, if I were to define who I am, in Christ, I am a child of God who is loved by God. That there was originally a separation between us and God, but through Jesus, it reconciled us back to him. When we place our faith and trust in him, we are ascribed a new identity. I'm a child of God who is now loved by God, which means I can let go of all of those old ways of thinking, those insecurities, the shame, the lies, the imposter. I can let go of all of that stuff and stand rooted in being a son or a daughter of God, because that is now how God sees us. And because he is God, his opinion of us is the most important opinion that we could ascribe and define ourselves to. Because when you see you as God sees you, you can be okay with you. When you see you from God's perspective, you can be okay and good, knowing you're good just as you are. So we've been building all of this throughout the series. Again, that was 4 parts in just a few minutes. So go back and watch or listen if you missed any of those or you have questions about any of those statements. But for me, when I was 20, and I would hear this phrase, I'm just trying to find myself, I was very confused when I would hear this. Because I was already a follower of Jesus. I mean, I knew this idea, I'm a child of God, but I was confused because when I would have thoughts or questions or even say things like that, I would be kind of just unsure of myself because I would think, well, if I'm in Jesus, if I'm a child of God, then why would I need to find myself? Why do I still feel unsure of who I am and my identity? Because what I didn't know, and I'm much more aware of today, is that there is a difference between knowing something is true and living as if you believe it is true. There's a difference between knowing I'm a child of God and actually operating day to day as if that is the thing that defines me most in my life. I have a mentor. Now, he says these wise statements every now and then, and he said something years ago that it's been a really defining quote for me. And I thought, man, he's so smart and so wise. And then I go to discover that he stole it from someone who stole it from someone who stole it. It actually goes back 2,500 years, I found out after doing a little bit of research. And this is where it was originally spoken by a Chinese philosopher named Lao Tzu when he said this: the longest journey that a man must take is the 18 inches between his head to his heart. The longest journey that a man must take is the 18 inches from his head to his heart. There's a difference between knowing something about who I am and actually from my heart living and operating that way. I mean, there's actually brain science that supports this now, where what happens and what information is processed in the right side of our brain is related to like our experiences and our memories and our relationships. And in the left side of our brain, we have logic and reasoning and thinking and thoughts and all of that. And what we now know about the brain supports this thing that was said so long ago, because the brain, the right side, actually processes information faster than your left side. So regardless of what you know, based on your experiences in life and who you believe yourself to be in your heart, whether you are aware of it or not, is going to drive your direction and the action that you give to your life. This is why one of those statements we've talked about here at Northpoint over the years is the idea that it is your direction, not your intention, that determines your destination. It is where you are headed. We can have great intentions all day, but it's where we are actually going as a result of what is in our heart that's driving our action that's going to determine where we end up one day. I would say if you're in here and maybe you previously, were unchurched, not a follower of Jesus, or maybe you were like Mariah. You said, you know what? Jesus was misrepresented to me and I ran with that. Maybe that's your story, or maybe that is where you are at right now. I would just say for you, this might be why you are not a follower of Jesus. Because there's a whole group of Jesus followers, Christians, that perhaps know that they are children of God, but there's this big gap between their head and their heart. And within this gap is all this shame and lies and judgment, and what's in them comes out of them on those around them, and it could have come out on you in a very hurtful way to where you said, you know what? That's why I'm not a follower of Jesus. That's why I don't want anything to do with Christianity. This is why what we've been saying is that the new self is the starting point, not the end. The new self is the starting point. It's the beginning of the journey. It's why Jesus didn't just say, hey, know all of these really good things, right? No, he said, follow me. Follow me. And as you go on this journey and you step into this new identity, allow it to emanate into every other area of your life. What I want to do to wrap up this series today is lean into this invitation that Jesus gives us to go on the 18-inch journey from our head to our heart and who he says we are as children of God, loved by God when we accept that invitation. I want to lean into what that looks like, what might happen in our life if we were to truly stand secure in that. I want to paint a picture of what it tangibly means and what the outcome could be if we allow that to make its way all the way down to our heart. If you're in here and you're not a follower of Jesus, I just hope that this paints a better picture for you of Christianity. But for all of us, as we go on this journey and we ask the question of who am I think for most of us in here, we ask this out of a desire for something to become more at peace within us, with who we are and the path we are on, right? And that's a good thing. That is okay. But there's a different picture that we miss that is far more meaningful, and there's something far greater at stake if we are to truly step into this identity as a child of God. So I want to talk about what that is. Jesus, towards the end of his ministry, he's about to die, actually, just a few days later, and he's got all of his guys around him, his disciples, and he's talking to them, and he's saying, hey, guys, you've seen all of this. You've been a part of this journey, right? I want to give you some instructions on what now to do, because I'm about to go, but I need you to have some handles on what to do. And he gives them these instructions on both what to do and what the outcome is of the 18-inch journey. And here's how he begins to unpack it with this analogy. He says, I am the true grapevine, and my Father is the gardener. Now that phrase, the true grapevine, is important because a first century Jewish person would have related the ancient nation of Israel to be the one that was considered to be the vine between us and God. And Jesus says, no, there's a new covenant now, which means now the way you see yourself and the way you connect to God is actually through me. I am the true vine, and God is the gardener. See, I recognize that for most of us in here, we're not familiar with the ins and outs of vineyards and grapevines, myself included, right? A first century person would have been far more familiar with what all of this looks like. And so they would have been able to know some of the imagery that goes along with a grapevine or a vineyard. One of the important things they would have known is that a grapevine actually grows horizontally along the ground if it's left untended. And when it does this, it actually doesn't produce a lot of fruit, but only when it's given the support in the form of a trellis or some sort of vertical structure. It grows vertically, and when it grows vertically, it actually starts to produce the fruit that we all know and love and enjoy, right? So this is the context around which Jesus is talking to the disciples, and he continues to talk through this analogy. He says he cuts off every branch of mine that doesn't produce fruit, and he prunes the branches that do bear fruit, so they will produce even more. You have already been pruned and purified by the message that I have given you. And so Jesus equates us as the branches, he is the vine, and God is the gardener, okay? And God manages and prunes and takes care of the branches. And this is giving a picture of what a relationship with God, continual relationship with God, looks like. And Jesus says to the disciples, you're already on this journey. You've already begun this journey. And so here's what you are to now do. Remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. This word remain, it can be synonymous with abide, to keep in step with, to walk with. It's analogous to a vine and a branch staying connected to one another. And he's giving a picture of a follower of Jesus pursuing a relationship with God through him. Okay, and I think a lot of us in here, we read something like this, we go, okay, well, what does that fruit look like in this analogy? Like, what does that fruit actually mean in our life if we are to stay connected with Jesus? And I want to jump really quick to the Apostle Paul, because in his letter to the Galatians, in the Galatian church in the first century, he actually talks more specifically and tangibly about what this fruit looks like. Here's what he writes. He says, but the Holy Spirit, the very Spirit of God living in you when you place your faith and trust in Jesus, produces this kind of fruit in our life. It's important to note, it is not us producing the fruit. It is God in through us that produces it. We're going to come back to that in a second. Here is the list of fruit that is produced. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. These are the indicators of a life lived remaining in Jesus. I think if we're honest, regardless of our religious background, that all of us desire these things in our life. We desire a joy and happiness, right? We want a peace knowing that we are okay and good. We want to have self-control to not harm ourselves or those around us. We want relationships that are good and kind and faithful, right? We desire these things. But what Paul is saying here is that it is produced in and through us. Most often when we want these things in our life, we just try to white knuckle it and try really hard and read all the books and show up to church every week and we're going to try really hard. Like, you don't see trees out there that are just going like, fruit. And fruit just like pops out, right? I hope you don't see trees out there doing that. I've never seen one. Because Paul's saying that's not how it happens. It's a slow process. It is over time, and it is because it is coming from the nutrients of the vine remaining connected. Going back to Jesus here, he continues, neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. That we cannot authentically exhibit these things in our lives and our stories without remaining true, connected to him. I love this quote from the book Becoming a King from Morgan Snyder. He says this about identity. You cannot live beyond your identity. You cannot live beyond your identity. This is the idea that who you are informs what you do, right? We've already talked about that, but I want to take it a step further in light of what Jesus is saying here. I would add on that you cannot love beyond your identity. You cannot love beyond your identity. That where we are searching and scrambling for our own self-worth and value, and we're trying to get all of our needs met by everybody around us, no matter how great our intentions are in every relationship and area of our life, where we are scrambling to prove ourselves, our love is inhibited to those around us. I had an experience early on in my marriage with my wife, Ashley, where we were in a counseling session and we were talking about some things and what it means to see ourselves the way God sees us and see each other and how that translates to marriage. And I now realize that I was given a little bit of a test by my counselor, and I failed it miserably. And so I want to share that failure with you guys. What happened was he asked me, hey, will you share 3 things that you love about Ashley? And she's sitting right next to me. And I thought, this is great. I love this woman. This is going to be easy, right? I know what to say. And so I said something along the lines of, well, I love that she's my wife. I love the life we share together. She's my best friend. I love spending time with her. And he kind of gave this pause. And he looked at me, looked at her. I kind of had this sinking moment in my stomach going, oh no. And then he said, okay, Jeremy, now I want you to say 3 things you love about Ashley. Because what you just did is you said 3 things you love about what Ashley can do for you. And I remember thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, like I'm not even aware so often of how I am just looking to everybody around me in my world to meet needs that I have, to benefit me, to prop up my own worth and value. I think we all do this in relationships in certain aspects of our life, where we resort back to old ways of thinking, the old shame, the false identities, the imposters, the insecurities, the lies we tell ourselves. All those things come out of us. We resort back, and when we do that, it inhibits our ability to love and see people right where they are, just as they are. I'll share a few examples of this. I think we do this with big life decisions where we have our careers and wealth and status, and when we are disconnected from our true self, we will work and work and work without rest to fill some hole in here. And in doing so, we'll do it to the detriment of our personal health, our relational health, and even those people that we climb over in order to get where we want to go so we can be okay with us. I think we do this with even just day-to-day acts of kindness, where if we're honest, sometimes we do these things because of how it makes us feel or how it makes us look, right? I think we do this with church, where we come and sit in rows, and don't get me wrong, I love church, I love Sunday morning, I love rows, but we do all the right things, we check all the right boxes, and then all of a sudden it's like we mess up. It's not if, it is when, because we all fall short. When we mess up, we recognize that we're still not quite there because it's like piles of shame just come on top of us. And we're unable to see the grace that God gives us or extend that to other people. I think we do this in our marriage sometimes, where we project onto our spouses our own insecurities with ourselves, or we use them as a means to an end, And so we do things for them to serve them, but it's just to really make us feel better. And in projecting our own insecurities onto them, we attempt to try to perfect and manage the different picture of them so that we feel better about ourselves because of the image we then display to the world. I think we even do this with our kids. This is why some of us even have kids, because we have a broken identity that we have yet to figure out, yet to be okay with us. And so we hope that a child will fill some hole inside of us. But their world, their behavior, their life becomes our identity. And now we need our kids to need us because of some need that we have because we're not okay with us. I think we do this in so many different areas. And this is not to knock on us and make us feel worse about ourselves, because Jesus knows it's why the invitation is to remain in, that these things come from a good but often just misdirected and broken desire. And Jesus says, remain in me, keep in step with me. He knows we lose sight. He knows we forget it. And he says, here's the picture. These are the things, love, joy, patience that I want you to shoot for, that I want you to remain in me so you experience them in your life. Because he continues his analogy. He says, when you produce much fruit, when your lives are full of that list of things that we just looked at, you are my true disciples. You are standing rooted in who I say that you are. And this brings great glory to my Father. If you want to know where you are on the head-to-heart journey in your identity and how you see yourself as a child of God, look at the fruit in your life. Look at the fruit of your relationships, of your work, of how you spend your time, how you spend your energy, how you spend your money, how you live your life day to day. What is the fruit of that? I've had the privilege to sit on the other side of some of these just incredibly fruitful people. They're just ordinary individuals that I learned so much from, and then others are writing books and podcasts, and you just learn from them. And there's a few key characteristics that I keep picking up on as I get to learn from them. For a lot of them, they have this weirdness and silliness that just comes from a deep contentment in who they are, knowing that they have nothing to prove. They're incredibly difficult to sit across from and hide, like they see right through you to your core. Most of the time, they're really okay with these like long, awkward pauses in silence. Like that one right there. I don't know if that was uncomfortable for y'all. That felt like an eternity to me up here, so I just know I'm not there yet. But they're okay with those kind of things. And these people, whenever I get to learn from them, I just feel like I get so much, I grow so much. And one day I was walking in my neighborhood, and I'm listening to a guy, his name is Mike Wells, and he said this very simple phrase that, low expectation, it's simple, but it is so profound. And I remember walking, and I just had to stop and process what I just heard, because he's talking about what it means to remain and abide, and he said this sentence right here: a tree doesn't eat its own fruit. To which I thought, I had like this light bulb moment go off, where you would have thought that I just discovered Einstein's theory for relativity and I solved it all and figured it out, because I just thought to myself, trees don't do that. Like, they don't do that, right? It was amazing. But the deeper realization for me in this moment was that so often I'm on this head-to-heart journey as a son of God, and I'm striving, trying to get to the core of who God says I am in hopes that it's going to deliver something for me in here. But so often I forget the picture that Jesus is painting in the great paradox of Christianity. Is to go on the journey is to eventually arrive at a place where you can genuinely and authentically say that it's not all about me. In fact, I just experience this together. I want you to say this out loud on the count of 3, okay? Ready? 1, 2, 3. It's not all about me. That is so hard for us to stomach and come to terms with. Jesus died for me. Every other identity I have outside of that is an illusion. But if I am to remain in him and fruit is to be produced in my life, it is for the benefit of those around me. It's the peace that I bring to every relationship. It's the patience and gentleness that I bring to my family, or the humility to apologize when I don't do that and say, I'm sorry, I messed up. That's not who I am. It's the goodness I bring to my neighbor and my community. It's the self-control I bring to not indulge in things that harm me and those around me. It's the love that overflows out of me onto people around me. This is the picture of what happens in our life when we go on the 18-inch journey from our head to our heart. It's why Jesus ends the entire analogy with this command, this famous command where he says, love each other. What's your standard on how you are to do that? What's the bar on how you're to do that? As I have loved you. How did Jesus love us? He gave everything, gave all of him, leveraged himself for our benefit. When we operate out of this place, when we stand rooted as children of God, made in his image, knowing we have nothing to prove, the world can't bring us any more value or worth because we know exactly where it comes from, and we're able to see ourselves as God sees us, it enables us to see other people with the same kind of clarity. That because I know I am a child of God, because I know I'm made in his image, I can look at you regardless of your skin color, regardless of how different you are, how you behave, who you vote for, what you do to me, and I can look at you and see you as someone made in the image of God with the invitation to be a child of God, and I can treat you that way. Because when you see you as God sees you, when you see you as God sees you, it enables you to love others as God loves you. It enables you to be for people in such a way, not out of what it does for you, but altruistically, selflessly for their benefit. That you steward what has been given to you, your time, your energy, your resources in such a way to bring value to the world around you. It enables you to do this from remaining in and staying rooted to who Jesus says that you are. We're in this series trying to get to the root of who we are, and if this is the picture of what it means to go on this journey from our head to our heart, then what I want to do is we end the series today, and I just want to try to distill this down to 3 things that we can practically do and just be aware of as we walk out of here and try to continue on this journey. The first, is just very straightforward. It's from Jesus when he says this. He says, remain in me. Remain in me. Keep in step with, walk with, to which we go. Well, what does that practically, tangibly look like in our life? What remaining in Jesus is just waking up each day and making sure you have space on your calendar to show up to your relationship with God and watch what he does with the time that you give him. It is waking up each day and just beginning your day with a conversation for him. It's learning, it's reading the story of redemption through Jesus in the Bible and wrestling with it and learning from it. It is learning to invite him into every part of your day through prayer. Learning to be still, to know that he is God and that we are not. And then as that truth sinks deeper, to allow him to be the thing that you view the world through. I recognize still, remaining, it's tangibly, well, what does that look like? What does that mean? It is just showing up and watching what he does with the time that you give him. A couple years back, I was just in a season where when it came to my identity, it was a little convoluted because what I was doing is I had these key people in my life that I really cared about what they thought of me. They were just incredible people. But what I began to do is I began to project onto them that based on how I thought they viewed me is how I thought God viewed me and how I would be okay with myself or not okay with myself. So it just got all convoluted. I was projecting God onto them, and they never signed up for that at all. But what happened is I was in this season, and I woke up one day, and it was a thunderstorm going on. It was 4 a.m. I'm a morning person, so for some of you, you're like, go back to sleep. I was like, I'm up, let's go, right? I love thunderstorms, love being awake early in the morning. So I went out and sat on my patio, and I brought my journal, and this is just one of my ways of remaining in and trying to stay connected to God, is journaling just what's going on and talking to God about it. And so I was out on my patio, and this thunderstorm was going, but towards around 6 a.m., it started to simmer down. It was like misting rain, but still one of those crazy, just black clouds, lightning, crazy thunder right above my house. But the sun started to come up. It was in the summer. It was early, around 6 a.m. The sun started to come up. And behind my house in the east, it passed between the horizon and the black clouds. And so it was casting this crazy orange glow across the whole thing, across my whole neighborhood that I could see. And then this rainbow popped up right in front of me. Just like I felt like I was the only one in the world who could see it. And so I have this picture where it's like, black clouds, thunder, lightning, crazy sunrise, and the rainbow's right in front of me. And I just had this impression, this feeling in that moment. I just felt like God was saying to me, Jeremy, I make all of this. This is my glory. This is my power. And through all of it, I'm personal and I love you just as you are. Why then do you continue to elevate others' opinions of you above my opinion of you? And it was just this feeling, this impression. It wasn't like the audible voice of God, but I remember being there writing that down, and for me, It was just one of the moments of just showing up to a relationship with God open-handedly and seeing what he does with the time that we give him. I'm not saying it needs to be 4 a.m. or there needs to be a thunderstorm, but it's got to be on your calendar. It's got to be something that you do every single day. And over time, watch what he does with it. As we remain, there are seasons where we might need to be reminded. Jen talked about this in her message last week, and so we're not going to unpack this one a ton, but there are just times when we can't see ourselves the way God sees us, and so we need somebody on the other side of us to remind us of who we are. It is through the context of community. We love groups at Northpoint. We love groups. We talk about it 2 full Sundays a year because we know that rows are great, but we ultimately desire every single person to get in a circle because we know that the kind of deeper conversations that happen around identity and who God says we are, those don't happen naturally in our culture. You have to instill intentional time with other people to provide opportunities for those to happen. And we just believe that one of the best vehicles for you to be reminded of your identity as a child of God is through the context of community in a group. And so shameless plug here. If you're not in a group, get in a group. Again, scan the QR code, stop by What's Next, talk to one of us. We'd love to help you figure out what that looks like. But get in a group. I can't imagine how my identity would be and what my life would be like if it weren't for people who have reminded me along the way. So we are to remain and we are to be reminded. And the last thing is that we are to just be aware that there is a refinement that happens along the way. This is the pruning that Jesus talked about with the vine and the branches and the gardener. This is the pruning, and this is a whole other message in and of itself. I just want to recognize that. But this pruning are the painful, difficult, suffering kind of seasons that we go through. Sometimes it's self-inflicted. Sometimes it is inflicted by somebody else. Sometimes it's a result of the fact that this is just not heaven yet, which means this is a broken and flawed world. But the people that truly stay the journey, who lean into the discomfort, are those who discover an identity they didn't know was possible. I would say this is where most people jump ship on the head-to-heart journey because this is where it gets hard. It's where you have to look in the mirror in ways you've never looked in the mirror. It's where you have to swallow your pride in a way you never have before, to trust God when it doesn't even make sense. It's where books and podcasts and coming on Sunday just doesn't do it. You have to lean in, just continue to trust God and watch what he does with the time you give him. And be reminded along the way from those who love you. And I would just say in my own experience and watching it in other people's lives, those who stay the course and lean in to all of that discomfort are those who come out on the other side with this just insane security in who they are, knowing they have nothing to prove. And they love from a beautiful place when they do that. To end our time, I just want you to imagine with me for a second. I want you to picture a version of you that is so secure, fully believes you are a child of God. That is how God sees you. You are okay with you. You are good with you. You are okay with you. I want you to imagine what would happen in your life if you were to do that. I want to read just a list of things that could occur on your journey if you were to see yourself this way. Imagine the freedom it would bring to be fully, completely secure in who you are. Not chasing, not striving, but you know where your worth comes from, and so you feel like you have nothing to prove. Imagine that version of you. Imagine what it would be like to no longer get defensive or offended when you feel like people threaten your self-worth, because you know where it lies. You know what God says about you. And so instead of getting defensive and offended and allowing it to take up all this mental energy, you just see them through it all. The people who do that and say that and you love them, you remain open and curious because you're centered in who you are. Imagine having a conversation with somebody, and while you're listening to them talk, you're not thinking about what you're going to say next or how you're coming off to them, but instead you're just truly listening, present, and engaged, there for their benefit. Imagine in your marriage, if it wasn't about what he or she can do for me, but how I can leverage me for you every single day. Imagine how your marriage would change. Imagine the money it would save you from buying things you can't afford to fill some hole inside of you. And so you live with financial peace and margin. And not only that, but you can go to a greater extent of giving generously to others in your life to bring value to them because you know where your value already is. Imagine the relational casualties that could be avoided by no longer chasing and striving and having priorities just shifted around in a way that ends up leaving family and friends behind. Imagine a version of you that was good with you. You didn't have anything to prove. And so you show up to the games. You show up to the dinner table. And you're present. And you're engaged. Imagine a version of you where your value was no longer determined by how your children behave or what they do or who they think they are on their own identity journey. That you know where your value is, and so you're loving and patient, and you just see them as somebody to steward along their own journey and to love them right where they are. Imagine that version of you as a parent. Imagine how secure you could be on the other side of dysfunctional relationship dynamics, where somebody says or does something continually, but it becomes like water on a duck's back. Just bounces right off of you. You're so secure in who you are that not only doesn't affect you, but you can see them and love them even in the midst of all the brokenness. And imagine a version of you where you elevated God's opinion of you above any other assumed opinion that you think other people might or might not have. And then finally, because I'm somebody who, works in the church world, I just want you to imagine for me how different the perspective of God and Jesus and the church would be if people were to have an experience on the other side of a Christian and that was largely a positive experience. Imagine how different it would be. Unfortunately, the common story is not that. The common story is there is a head and a heart gap. And what's in somebody comes out on those around them, and it causes a break. But imagine a world of Jesus followers that are so secure in who they are as a child of God that they just love selflessly to the world and community around them. Imagine how much more relevant Jesus would become in this city, in this world, if that were to be the case. The invitation of this entire series has been to see us as God sees us. And so as we end today, what I want to do is just put our attention on him, to see him for his worthiness, his power, and his love that he has for every single one of us. Just provide an opportunity for you to just open your hands and really invite God in and say, God, I want to see you. I want to see me the way that you see me. Our band is going to come out. They're going to lead us in a song. It's one that we've sung for years here at Northpoint, but the lyrics are so powerful in light of everything we've been talking about. The lyrics say, God, there is no one like you. There's no one like you, which means nobody's opinion of me matters more than your opinion of me. So God, would you open up my eyes and wonder? Help me see me as you see me. And through that, would you lead me in your love to those around me? We're going to sing this, and I just want this to be an opportunity for you, an invitation to lean into God's love, maybe in a way you haven't before. And through that, begin to see, perhaps, how it's not about you. You can begin to love other people in the same way. And so would you stand and sing this with us?
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. You're worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Just want to live for you, Jesus. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Yes, we live for you, 'cause you're holy, holy, ever sing. Yes, he's worthy, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you, Jesus. Jesus, that name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. He's worthy, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, 'cause he's holy. Yes, holy. There is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those. Oh, he's holy. There is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Yeah. We're gonna stand upon love. Yeah. It's the only foundation. Yes, I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Yes, I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm found, and I'll put my trust in you alone. Oh, you alone. And I will not be shaken, 'cause you're holy. There is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes, oh, and show me. We want to know you, God. We want to love like you love it. Oh, you are holy. There is no one like you, no. None beside you. Oh, show us how to see like you, Lord. How to love like you, Lord. In your love, I'm gonna build my life. Said I will build my life upon your love. It's a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you, you alone, and I will not be shaken. Yes, I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Oh no.
Would you pray with me? Heavenly Father, thank you that while we don't deserve it, you continue to step in to that space in our life and invite us to be able to call you Abba, to be able to call you our Heavenly Father. Thank you for that truth. And I just pray for everybody in here, everybody watching online, that you would allow us to sink that truth, that message down a little bit further from our head to our heart. Let that be the thing that defines us most in our life. And let that be something that defines the way we live and treat and love other people. God, thank you for this journey that we get to be on. In Jesus' name, amen. Guys, thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next week.